me out, you bus whack.
This time on Pete and his bus, I drive this beautiful pre-war Lancia. I take an old bus on a big tour, and that bus should be very familiar to you all. And I really struggle with RML 2355. Welcome to another episode of Pete and his buses. Guys, the eagle-eye viewers amongst you will have spotted straight away that I'm actually sitting in front of none other than RM1009. And the good news is she is completely up and running again. And guess what? We were right. Richard took the diesel tank out and it was completely filled with crud. He cleaned it all out, flushed the system out, put the tank back in there, and lo and behold, she is fit, fighting, and running once again. And she will no doubt feature on this channel very soon. But I've got more good news. This episode is sponsored by none other than Wine52. That's not Beer 52, that's Wine52, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out the difference. And they are offering all of my viewers a free case of wine, and all you've got to do to claim it is go to www.wine52.com/PeteWine. You've got to pay the £9.95 postage, and you are going to get a free case of wine. So why are Wine52 doing this? Well, they are one of the most exciting wine communities in the UK, and they've been on a massive mission to find some of the best wines from around the world and work with some of the most amazing independent producers. This month's case features wines from a region called La Mancha in Spain that has a very, very rich history when it comes to quality red and white wines. When you receive your free box of wine, you will become part of this very special wine community. But if at any stage you change your mind, don't worry, you can pause or cancel whenever you want. Now, I'm going to repeat myself one more time. To get a free box of wine, go to www.wine52.com/PeteWine and get your free case. Make sure you tell them what you prefer, red or white wine, pay the £9.95 postage, and a free box of wine is on its way to you. Now, later on in the video, I'm going to be trying some of the wine, so stick around for that if you want to find out. And other than that, right now, I'm going to take you through the most troublesome period I've had in my life for about 10 years. The biggest problem, stress, and worry in my day-to-day working life is Routemaster buses being reliable. So much so that I don't generally actually talk about it because I don't want to jinx anything, but it is a fact. In my line of work, the biggest issue is these buses getting to the location and fulfilling their commercial duties. I have my bus inspected regularly. When it needs something, I do it, and we try and stay on top of regular maintenance to make sure that these things are going to do what they're supposed to do. But there is always that tiny little worry in the back of my head that some part somewhere on the bus gives up and I have a major crisis on my hands. So when I heard my flexi pipe was blowing a little bit and had done so for a couple of events, I thought that needs to be repaired. So I ordered some flexi pipe, and I thought when it arrives, I will fit it. But I still had a few events in between. Now, on the way back from the last event at Twickenham, the bus started sounding very differently. Not just slightly out of the ordinary, but more like a Spitfire. So I had a bit of a laugh scaring children and old people on the side of the road, but by the time I got back to the barn, it sounded like this. Whoa! Pretty Now I'm about to go into a situation that any person that works on vehicles, old or new, will understand. You set out to do a 5-minute job and it becomes a 3-day emotional roller coaster. The flexi pipe, which I thought was the culprit, came off in about 15 seconds. And yes, it was slightly damaged, but when I checked the downpipe towards the engine, my day just got a whole lot worse. What I discovered is this. The flexi pipe hadn't just given way. The entire downpipe from the manifold of the engine all the way to the flexi pipe had sheared off clean at the manifold. Now the annoying thing is that section of exhaust is of course the custom bit, because remember guys, these Cummins engines didn't come in these buses new, they were an afterthought and they made a custom piece for that engine to fit on that bus, and of course that's the bit that's broken. No, it gets worse though. Because these engines weren't naturally designed to be in these buses, they never thought about the ergonomics of it, and maybe we should put the exhaust on that side because you can get to it. The exhaust manifold disappears right under the firewall, underneath the driver's seat, and you just can't get to it. I spoke to Lord Barrington. He said, yes, there is a way, but you need about 1 meter's worth of extensions on your socket. You need to lie flat under the bus, get past the starter motor, and then have a bar about the same length to then crack the nuts off. Lord Barrington actually happened to be there that day when I was trying to do this, and he gave me a hand. And then it got even worse. Because the bolts that are holding this whole thing in have been on there since 1992. They've been hot and cold 1,000,000 times over, and when we took them off, of course, they snapped. And not just one, no, all of them snapped clean off. It is at this stage I simply run out of things that I can do myself. So I ring the only person I know for this job, and that is Ben the Tree Hugger. He is a master welder and genius metal fabricator. Now the repair is easy, fast and beautiful. Very, very nice, and now a clean up, right? But he then spends the next 5 to 6 hours drilling out the remaining studs in the manifold. And then with my aid, we fit the downpipe onto the manifold, and it takes us all the way through to 2 a.m. in the morning. Fingers crossed, it's fixed. Right, got my flexi, part of the exhaust. We're gonna stick them together and bung it on the bus. There we go, guys. That is the brand new flexi in place. This is what I set out to do, but sadly it became a little bit more complicated. So 14 hours later, with one evening to go till my event, the bus is completely back together again, and we're now going to try and fire it up. And I really, really hope that everything acts and behaves as it should. The bus makes it to the event with hours to spare. And the funny thing is, the event organisers are completely none the wiser. But the sad thing is, my troubles are far from over. So having come back from the event last night, which I barely made because of all the stuff going wrong with the exhaust, I, on the way home, lost all brakes. Now, as you can imagine, a bus that weighs the bones of 10 tons, that is not an ideal situation, and it's the kind of thing that you hope never happens to you, but it did. Luckily, I was on the road at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning, so there wasn't any traffic around, and I was able to sort of crawl home on the handbrake and with shifting down the gears. Total nightmare situation, but annoyingly, the bus is out in 3 days, so I've got to get down there and have a look and see what the problem is. So when I got in last night, I left the engine running and I checked the brake oil level, and there's none at all. I also checked underneath the bus, and that union is where the brake fluid is leaking. So this is obviously a common spot for them to go wrong, because for those of you that have watched my episodes all the way back in the beginning, in episode 2, I have the same leak on the other bus. Oh yeah! Ah, you massive horse. It's where the union holds the pipe, and you get a moisture and dirt buildup between the two, and that's where they go. So at least I'm confident I know I can fix it, because having already done it once before. Let's get to it. Got the pipe off. So it's pretty straightforward what the problem is here. Yes, that would be it. So Pertec were able to save me again 4 or 5 years later with exactly the same problem. Now I repeat, this is not a permanent repair, but it should do for now, and it'll get the bus to its next event. The bus fulfills its commitment perfectly, and apart from fighting with a tree to get into the grounds of Morden Hall, everything goes as planned. But guess what? On the way home, I hear this. Yes, did you miss that? This. And I could feel it in my foot. Now, my initial instinct was just to kill the engine. And I happened to be next to a lay-by, so I killed it and I rolled it to the side of the road. Of course, my mind's going mad, thinking, oh my lord, I've blown up the entire engine, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I had a little look around the engine bay, and I couldn't really see anything wrong. So I turned it over a few times on the starter motor, and then I saw the fan belt. For some reason, part of it has let go. Now, I'm on the side of the road, so I have to make a snap decision, and I choose to very gingerly drive the bus back. And luckily, it makes it with the remainder of the belt still attached to the bus. And there we go. You can see the ribs that are missing. Right, first we're going to take that water hose out of the way so we've got better access. Before you remove the belt, look carefully the way it's positioned. The tensioner does not have to be removed to replace the fan belt, but because the fan belt went unexpectedly, I want to inspect it and make sure everything is right. And luckily for me, it is absolutely fine. And there you go. It was 8 rib, and I drove home on 5. They always say use genuine parts if you can. Well, there you go, guys. Right, the belt is on. Just got to make sure that we have it lined up and tensioned correctly. So I've got another block of wood under it. I think we might just have enough leverage now to stick the belt on. I'm just going to take the old block of wood out now. And release the tensioner. There we go. spanner out. And I should now have a belt with lovely tension. Today, the bus is out to HMS Nelson to serve the men and women of the Royal Navy. It's a 160-mile round trip, and for a change, RML 2355 does it without incident. Not once in the last 10 years of running this lovely vehicle have I ever had so many separate problems in such a short period of time. Let's hope that the rest of my season is a little bit more, shall we say, uneventful. Genuinely a month to forget. I know sometimes in the videos it looks like, oh, this broke, and then I phoned my friend and it was fixed. It is not always like that. The reason why it's not is because people actually pay big money to have this unique vehicle at their events. So when money is exchanged, they expect a certain level of service, and that includes the bus arriving at the location on time. So there's a lot of pressure. It's not like your Sunday driver that goes wrong and you go, oh, I'll send it to the mechanic, when I'm ready. Anyway, the only positive I can draw from all of this is the fact that the bus chose to break down every time on the way home and not the way to the event. So no commercial ventures were missed, lost, or agreements broken. Now, let's put this behind us and let's hope the future is bright and reliable. We're now going to visit an old friend of ours and let's see if she has been reliable. For those of you that have been watching me for a while, you'll remember that way back in episode 28, my friend Richard and I went to look at some buses that had been sat in the yard for a few years. Amongst those buses was RML 2634, and Richard actually ended up buying that bus and we drove it back to the barn without a hitch. But about a year later, Richard simply fancied something a little bit more special. At the same time, Raccoon, the advertising agency that I regularly collaborate with, were desperately looking for a route master to use for promotional campaigns. So a deal was done, and I drove RML 2634 on her first official tour with Malone Soulier. The campaign was a success, but at the end I did say to you viewers that RML 2634 would be back on this channel. Well, that time has come now, and check out her new outfit. And here is RML 2634 in her latest guise. She's been vinyl wrapped to look like a particular can of cider. She's also about to embark on a tour to promote this beverage. But when I come to collect the bus, it's not quite finished. Now, this is no one's fault. It is simply because the turnaround and the time frame for this build has been extremely tight, and Raccoon have pulled out all the stops with an all hands on deck to get the bus done. But sadly, when it is done and I'm ready to drive out, this happens.
Apparently he's been stuck.
You couldn't write it, could you? Everybody is there trying to get this thing out the door, and at the last second when it's done, we turn it and nothing happens. Of course, my initial thought is batteries, but then again, the batteries that are on there are less than a year old and they should be fine, but the bus has been sitting around for a while. Anyway, they get a jump pack on it and still nothing happens. But then there's questions of how charged up the jump pack is. At the last minute, their in-house mechanic Neil grabs a battery charging pack that you plug into the mains. He sticks it on there and then boom, the thing starts. Everything seems to be okay, but the stop flag for the brakes keeps popping down and then popping back up again, which is a little bit worrying. I've tried the brakes, they work absolutely fine, so I decide to just press on and get this bus to the desired location.
Of a sketchy start, a few issues with the bus, a lot of last minute work, and then really difficult to get on site, but we are here and it is looking amazing.
However good the bus looks, the client has more demands, and so they should. They're the ones paying. Raccoon is prepared for this, and they've sent some of their top guys down here to finish all the small little details.
Perfection, bro, perfection.
And by the time these boys are done, the bus really does look amazing.
All the loose things are out of the bus. It's basically ready, packed up for me to go. The problem is the road going out of Hurlingham is completely and utterly packed, and it's going to be a bit of a nightmare getting out. So I am sitting here waiting to drive the bus out. Hopefully it won't take too long. So a minor panic. When I turned the key, nothing happened, but with a bit of intuitive behavior.
The fact the bus wouldn't start actually surprises me. The journey up here was the bones of 2.5 hours, and that should have been enough to charge the batteries up fully. I had no charge light in the cab, which means the alternator should be doing its job, so these batteries are either completely buggered or there is a bigger problem going on here that we haven't noticed. Either way, the bus is running. I'm not going to switch it off. I'm just going to drive her back home.
So it's now the next morning and the bus won't start, which is a bit of a problem. I was going to drive it back to Raccoon this morning for them to tidy up and do a bit of a snag on it for the next event because it's going to Liverpool next week, but I can't get it started. So guess who we've drafted in?
Lord Barrington has entered the building. Lord Barrington himself. Lord Barrington is a very busy bunny and he's not easy to book, but luckily we had actually booked him in for this day to do a service on the bus because she is about to do a load of miles. But of course it doesn't start, so we divert his attention and he spends the entire day going through the electrics. And by the powers of elimination, by the end of it, he says, your starter motor's buggered. So we now have a bus that's not serviced, is not ready to go, won't start, and has a buggered starter motor. And what's worse, Lord Barrington has other commitments, so he has to go. Old vehicles. Why? Why? Luckily for us, the next day Lord Barrington organises his friend Simon Parle from Routemaster Repairs and Restorations to turn up, and within the space of 2 hours, he switches out the starter motor, completely sorts out the brakes, and provides me with a new starter bomb which had gone missing. He is officially our saviour of the day.
So after a really stressful day, I should now technically be able to get in this bus, use a new starter bomb, fire it up, and go for a drive. Let's see if this has worked out.
Right. Here we go. Oh, hello. Ready? Oh, yes! Oh, yes! I love that sound. Because of commitments with my own bus, I wasn't actually around to deliver RML 2634 all the way to Liverpool, but I was informed by Raccoon that she did the journey without any problems. And what's even better, Lord Barrington was able to meet up with her and complete the full service. It's now up to me to collect her and bring her home.
Well, the good news is the bus is still here. It's always a bit tricky parking these up because, of course, they've got no back door, but I did manage to find a good spot to have the back door closed off-ish. I'm just going to check the vital fluids and then we're going to hit the road. Spot on. Good.
Oh, hello. What is this? Do me a favor, guys. Remember and register this moment. A security guard sent me down the wrong track and I ran into the night timber bus. Just remember it. It might be significant.
So there we have it. Nearly 1,500 miles up and down the country in a relatively short space of time. And even though she had a bit of a shaky start, 2634 has once again proven to be a great bus.
Isn't it lovely when everything works? And the operative word in that sentence is when. I think after all that chaos, I deserve a small drink, and luckily, Wine52 have supplied me with quite a few of them. So what do you get in your free box of wine?
First of all, you get a very aptly titled magazine called Glug, and it actually gives you really interesting information about the wine you're about to consume.
And it would not be a case of Wine52 without some tasty bar snacks. So I've chosen to open a red bottle of wine because that's generally what I drink, and this particular one is called the Lustroso, which is a Tempranillo. Now, in the tasting notes, there is all these sweet dark fruits and herbs and dark chocolate, and you think to yourself, this all sounds very pretentious and pompous, but you have a good smell and a try, and you think about those things and you can actually pick the flavors out. Those things are written down for a reason. And to be honest, this is absolutely wonderful and the kind of wine that I can drink all evening.
Now, I went for a mixed box, but remember guys, you can specify if you prefer white or red.
So I'm going to carry on drinking this wine, but I'm not going to carry on filming because I'm sure the quality of film might just deteriorate a tad. But I'd like to thank Wine52 for sponsoring this episode of Pete and His Bus and giving me something very nice to enjoy this evening. Cheers guys! Bye.